Welcome to the Sovereign CEO podcast, creating location-independent income, moving to a less bad country, or at least setting up an international backup plan, and doing all these things for very little money. If you're watching the video version of this podcast, you can see I'm not at my usual home. I am here in Paraguay, my second home. And here in Paraguay, people are very nice. People are really friendly. They're happy. They like foreigners. They like Westerners. It's great. And I was thinking about this the other day and decided to talk about this for this podcast because I've had a few questions about this from some of you on how you are treated as a foreigner when you move to or spend a lot of time in a foreign land, particularly a non-Western country, which is where you should go to escape the collapsing West. So when you go to a non-Western country, how will people treat me? What can I expect? How can I expect to be treated by those people? Especially if it's in a radically different culture, like an Asian culture, or if I go to South America and I don't speak English, will I piss them off? Will they look at me funny? All those questions I want to answer right now in this podcast. So I really went back and thought through, so I wrote this out, thought this through in terms of all the countries I've been to, how I've been treated as a foreigner in all these countries, and I came up with 5 categories, of 5 levels, so to speak, in terms of how people in those countries treat foreigners in that country. So I'll go through all 5 of these levels and I'll give you specific examples of these levels based on my experience in traveling the world the past 20 years or so. So level 1 is the most rare level. And in level 1, people in that country love foreigners. They worship foreigners. If they're women and you're a man, they are attracted to foreigners. They just love you there. They get excited to see you. They think you're just fucking great. Now, this is unusual. Very few countries are like this. If you want the ultimate example, the Philippines. Over in my other channel, Alpha Male 2.0, guys will ask me, I'm a guy, I'm a single guy, and I'm divorced, and I have no game. Where could I go to like meet girls? And dude, the easiest place to get laid if you're a guy in the world, if you're a Westerner, is the Philippines. You don't even need to be white. Now, it helps to be white. You can be darker skinned. You can be Hispanic, you can be black. Doesn't matter. If you're a Westerner, go to the Philippines and you'll get laid like a rock star because they love you. Now, there are many factors in terms of Philippines as to why they love you. That's a little beyond the scope of this podcast. But level 1, which is rare, is where they just, when you're a foreigner, they just think you're fucking great. Now, to be fair, there are countries like China, I'll talk about China at the end, where some people are at that category. Not the people at large in that country or in that city, but some individual people will be excited to see you because you're a foreigner. That's certainly the case. But right now, for the moment, I'm talking about the overall vibe you get when you visit a particular country, specifically a particular city, the overall vibe you'll receive from people as a foreigner. You could also argue, I have never done this myself, but I've talked to many people who have, white Westerners who go to like rural African villages, that also be level 1. They get so excited. My understanding is, I've never experienced this, never done this, but I've talked to a lot of people who have, including one of my uncles. You go there, and my brothers too, by the way, both my brothers have done this. You go to this remote African village where they barely ever see white people, and they get so excited. They come circle around you, and they love you, and they smile, and they want to talk to you. They want to touch you. They're so excited to see you. I knew a woman, she was a school teacher many years ago, very overweight white woman, a sweetheart, not attractive physically at all, but she went to these African villages, and she had 5 different men give her marriage proposals. There you go. So there are parts of the world, they're rare, where they will love you as a foreigner. However, to be honest and to be rational and to be objective, that is not the norm. Please do not expect this outside of a place like Philippines. Most likely the country you visit, the country you move to, the country you use as a flag are going to be in one of these other 4 levels that I'm about to talk about. The next level is level 2. And level 2 is where they like foreigners. They like you. They don't love you, but they like you. They're cool with you. Paraguay, perfect example. When you come to Paraguay, they like gringos, they like foreigners. There's actually a group of there's neighborhoods of Korean people here. They like the Koreans, they like the Americans. Very few Americans here. They like the Europeans. They like foreigners here. They don't love them, they don't worship them, they don't slobber all over them. It's not like you have mobs of women attacking you. That's not going to happen here in Paraguay. But they do like you. They're not going to get upset about it. They're not going to get, if you don't speak English, they don't care. They just smile and say, oh, no problem. Cool, we like foreigners. Not a big deal. Other countries like that, Panama would be another place where they like foreigners. There are various countries where they like foreigners. They don't love them. They're not neutral. They like them. And so that's a big plus when you're looking at possible flags in terms of foreigners they like. Now, there are some countries where they like certain types of foreigners and not other types of foreigners. So you could get into that scenario too. That's something you'll have to figure out in terms of your research. If you're looking at a particular country to go to, certainly my standard advice is go visit a new country for a week. Go talk to people, go interact with people, store clerks, people on the street, people you meet at various places, men and women both, and get a feel for how they react to you. Because maybe if you're a certain race or a certain culture, they may like you more than others. That's possible too. But level 2 is basically, on the overall, they like foreigners. They appreciate you and they think you're interesting, and that's about it. They don't love you, but they like you. That leads into level 3. And in level 3, they are neutral to foreigners. Most people, the rank and file walking around, they don't really care. They don't dislike you. They don't have a problem with you. They don't like you. They're just, okay, you're a foreigner, whatever. An example would be the way New Yorkers view other New Yorkers. You have all these cultures in New York. They don't hate the other cultures. They don't like the other cultures. They're there. They're just, oh, you're from Iran. Oh, you're from Italy. Oh, you're Chinese. All right. It's not a big deal. It's a neutral thing, which is, again, good. I think that's fine. Examples. I think Mexico is like this. They don't like you or dislike you if you're a Westerner or you're American. They just, okay, he's a gringo. Great, whatever. Armenia is similar to this. They don't dislike you, but they don't like you. You're just, okay, fine. In other words, in level 3 countries, they treat you in terms of how they feel about you the same way they would treat any other person in that country. If you don't speak the language, they might be mildly irritated, but they're not pissed off or offended like in some of the other levels I'm going to cover in a minute. So it's just a very neutral vibe. They don't like you, they don't dislike you. It's just, you're like any other person. You're a foreigner, big deal. I've noticed that many countries that have international populations, like where I live in Dubai, like Singapore, Hong Kong to a degree, although there's some exceptions there, are similar to this because they're so used to seeing foreigners. It's not a big deal, so they just don't give a shit. Now, certainly in these countries, you have individuals who are assholes. You can have individuals who are racist or individuals who have a problem with a certain country or culture. Again, I'm not talking here about individuals with the exception of the rule. I'm talking about the overall vibe. So that gets into level 4. This gets into the bad levels. So level 4 is where they tolerate you. If you're a foreigner, they tolerate you. In other words, they put up with you. They don't like you. They mildly dislike you. Now, they're not rude. They're not mean. They're very polite in many cases, but you can tell they're just putting up with your dumb ass. So a good example of that, one of my favorite examples of this is Japan. In Japan, if you are a white Westerner, they're going to be very polite. The entire culture is based around politeness. They're going to be very, very polite. But you're going to get the feeling, and I've had this feeling several times, I've been in Japan several times, from certain groups of people, certain types of people, where they just kind of give this look like, stupid gaijin, stupid big fat Americans, okay. You just get this look and a feel that they have kind of a problem with you. They're not going to say anything to you. They're going to be polite. Several times I've been to Japan, I received that, in particular from young men. Young Japanese men would kind of look at me the way that, this is the closest thing I could compare it to, is maybe an odd comparison, but this is the closest way I compare it, is that when two women meet and they're both hot and they look at each other up and down like, they give each other that look like you bitch, like your competition. I get that look from younger men in Japan. I don't know why I get that look. I get that vibe. I've had one or two sneers like, I've gotten that in Japan. I don't know why that is. I don't know if it's because I'm American, maybe not, because I've had other guys who are young guys who never have that problem. Maybe it's because I'm older. Maybe it's because I'm a big guy. I mean, I'm a big guy as compared to most humans. But when I go to Asia, I'm a giant compared to these people. Maybe it's that. I'm not sure what that is, and it may vary based on the culture. But I know I'm being tolerated. Asia, you'll run into this. Even parts of Thailand, they're very friendly. If you're the only white guy in a family of Thai people, they're gonna kind of like tolerate you. You'll never, Doug Casey's talked about this, you'll never actually be Thai. You could marry a Thai, have Thai kids, and be part, but you'll never be a Thai. Right, that's a part of this. I've experienced a little bit of this in Hong Kong from the older people. So actually, one of my first visits to Hong Kong a billion years ago, I was walking down the street and there was an old woman. It's the older people who are the worst. They tend to be more racist. This old woman in a little rocking chair sitting in front of this little shop of a bunch of seafood, live seafood, and the seafood was live, like, you know, lobster and stuff. And they had a squid in like a tank that you could buy to eat to prepare at home. And I'm like, oh, cool, a squid. So I pulled out my little cameras before they had good cameras on phones. Pulled out my little camera, started to like take a little video on the squid. And she goes, what the fuck you doing, Guilo? She called me a Guilo. Now, Guilo, if you know Cantonese or you know that culture, Guilo is not a nice term for white people. Now, it's not as bad as the N-word, but it's not neutral like gaijin in Japan. Gaijin is a neutral, it could be good or bad. Guilo is on the edge of bad. It means like white ghost all the way to white devil. Okay, I could do a whole thing on that. But I'm like, sweetheart, you know, you don't have to call me Guilo. There's no call for that, it's all right. So, you know, you'll get some of that from certain categories of people in some of these countries where they'll tolerate you. Now, she wasn't mean to me. She called me a Guilo, but that's not a big deal. It's fine. She tolerated me. Okay, that's level 4. That brings us, of course, to level 5. That is where they actively dislike you. If you're a foreigner, they don't like you, and they don't like that you're there. Perfect example, France. Fucking France. If you go to Paris and you don't speak any French, and you don't know the French culture, and you don't know the French food, they are gonna be assholes to you. Right? Right. Many of you can relate your stories when you go to France. As a matter of fact, a while back, I took Pink Firefly to France because one of her big lifetime dreams and goals, like many American women who have never traveled the world, is to go to France. Oh, France is so romantic, and the Eiffel Tower, and the accent, and oh, France, oh, Paris, Paris in particular, Paris, Paris, Paris. So I said, great, we'll go to Paris. I just sit her down and I explained to her, look, just so you know, people in Paris are assholes. They won't like you because you're an American, you don't speak French, you're not part of the French culture. There are a bunch of xenophobic people in France. Not racist, xenophobic. Those are two different things, okay? There's a difference between racism and xenophobia. France is not racist at all. If you're black, but you speak fluent French and you're part of the French culture, they will accept you 100%. But if you are any other color or any color, and you don't speak French, you're not part of the culture, they hate you. This is just a thing in France. It's part of the culture. So I had to warn her, hey, they're not gonna treat you all that great, because as soon as they realize that we're Americans and we don't speak French, they're gonna sneer at you, they're gonna be, you know, shitty, and she's like, oh, I don't think that'll happen. I'm sure it'll be fine. We were there for about 3 or 4 days, and at the end of the trip, she's like, oh my God, you were right. Uber drivers treated us shitty. Waiters at restaurants treated us like shit, because France is a level 5 culture. They don't like foreigners. They don't like them. They actively don't like them, and they will be mean to them. And there are different levels to that. And France isn't the only country in the world like this, but like level 1, level 5 countries tend to be unusual. They tend to be rare. Matter of fact, I'm trying to think of another country I've been to that's level 5 besides France. I don't think I can think of one. Maybe some of you who are more traveled like me can put in the comments if you think you've had encounters in other countries that are at level 5. So there's more than just France, I know that. Maybe the more restrictive countries like, I don't know, North Korea or something, but never been there, so I couldn't comment on that. So that's basically it. Those are the levels in terms of how people treat you. And I just gave you some examples and some ideas. As always, if you want to check out a new country, go there for a week and check it out and see how people treat you. I've done this many times with many countries all over the world. I've spent a week there, and even though I'm an introvert, I will force myself to go out and talk to people as best I can if there's a language barrier, and see, I pay attention very carefully to the types of responses I get. Let me end with China really quick. I was going to talk about that. In China, I've spent a lot of time in China post or pre-pandemic, and in China, what category is China in? Well, it's not. China depends on the person. It's a weird mix. So you have some countries that aren't in any of the levels. It just depends on the person. So if you are a white Western, you go to China, you'll encounter level 1 people, level 3 people, level 5 people. You'll encounter people who don't like you because you're a white Westerner, and they'll sneer at you and treat you like shit. You'll encounter people who don't give a shit at all. They don't care. And you'll encounter people who get so excited to see you. They'll wave at you, they'll smile, they'll try to talk to you. They're so excited. And you'll get kind of a mix of all these people. So there are some weird countries or regions, China's one of them, where you'll have a mix of all these levels depending on the person you meet. Kind of interesting. It might depend on the demographic, might depend on the age, could depend on the gender, could depend on a lot of things. Socioeconomic status. We could do a whole analysis, and every country is different. A little beyond the scope of this podcast, but at least I'm giving you a good idea in this podcast of what to expect. Hope this has helped. I will see you in the next podcast or video. Have fun. Bye.